Good morning, everybody. Is it? Oh, I do this every time, don't I? I say good morning and then have to check what day it is and what time it is and what my name is. I'm Rosie. I hope you're all well. Happy Thursday. Today I'm really excited about this one. I've really enjoyed making these and I think you're going to enjoy making them too. I have done this session in real life to face with people and they enjoyed it too. So I think this is going to be a good one. So today we're going to do I don't really know what to call it. So I've gone with easy and mindful grid art. And the reason I've gone with mindful is because they're really fun to do. And they're I think they're quite therapeutic to do. One of the things, and if you've seen my sessions before, if you've seen my art sessions before, I'm a huge advocate of all abilities, trying out creative skills. And you don't have to be good at these things. I think everyone's perfectly capable. Kids can do this, anyone can do it, and all of them will look amazing, I promise. But the reason I think that this sort of artwork is mindful is because I feel like when we grid up a page, it takes away the fear of sort of being creative on a big piece of paper. I think that can be quite scary for people who don't do art often. And I feel like this is a really great way of doing it because we're doing little squares of work. It means you only have to concentrate on one at a time and it's easier to fill a smaller space. It's less scary to fill a smaller space. And you can just really experiment and explore and just have real fun with it and you can't go wrong. And if you feel like you've gone wrong, this one's great because it uses barely anything. You need very little to do this. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways of doing it. I'm going to go through, I've got loads of examples today. So I'll probably mainly do something like this, which is just a really fun monochrome one. However, I thought if we want to zhuzh it up a bit, if we want to do a bit of colour, then there's loads of different options. So we can use a few different materials if we so wish. So for example, with this one, I've used paint as the background and I've spread the paint with an old store card, like, well, if I reach, I'll find it, like an old, this is like an old Waterstones card. And I've used that to spread the paint. Again, if you've seen my sessions before, you've probably seen me go on about these all the time. It's just a really nice, easy, abstract way of spreading paint. And then I've gridded it up sort of with different materials. So the grids are made out of, we've got pen, pencil, oil pastel, chalk pastel, probably some other stuff as well, but there's a bit of everything. So you can be really experimental if you like practice, like having to go with lots of different materials, then this might be the one for you. Alternatively, we can think about doing our background. So this is probably what we'll do today. I'll do a super easy background that uses lots of different colours, but essentially all I have done is scribble on the background and then I've done the black grid on top. So that's a really easy way of adding a bit of colour. You don't have to think about it at all. You can just enjoy filling the space with colour. If you have a favourite colour, then you could do it with your favourite colour. So this is a red one. This one I've done a bit of both. So I've done a bit of a background and then I've chosen a nice blue. However, I seem to remember this one not being quite so fun because I think my blue pen ran out and I got quite annoyed. So then I had to find a different blue that was very similar. So make sure your pen works before we go ahead and do it. We can do different colours. There's nothing to stop the grids being different colours. So this one, I think I've chosen 6 colours and then sort of spread it throughout. Or we can go to town and we can do different colours in each grid. So there I've got a sort of colour range. I think I've gone for like 4 or 5 colours and then mix them throughout. So really, you can take this this sort of idea away with you and then you can do it however you wish. So I'll just do it with a black pen and show you sort of how my brain does it. And then you can go ahead and experiment with colours, patterns, whatever you like. I think there is like a kind of, there are things that I think about when I'm doing it, which I'll talk you through. There's ways in which I kind of make sure that it looks really kind of interesting and bold, which we'll go through, but you can apply all of that to all the colours, all the shapes, all the patterns. So I've gone ahead and done mine with an A3 piece of paper. There's absolutely nothing to say you can't do this on a different size. You could do this on a massive piece of paper if you wanted. I have seen very similar pieces to this that children have done, and then they've put it together. So they've given each child an A3 piece of paper, and then they've just done their swooshy pattern with a big black paintbrush. And then they've put all of those pieces of paper together in one big grid, and it looks incredible. It's impossible to not look good. So you don't have to do it on A3. You could do it on a massive wall if you have it. You could do it on a tiny piece of paper. You could do it on your standard A4. You could even, in fact, if you don't have access to just plain paper, you could do it on a piece of magazine or newspaper. There's nothing stopping you doing it on any surface that you have available. So I'm just doing it on A3 mainly because I think it's my favourite size paper. Does everyone have a favourite size paper? Is that a thing? Or is that just a me? I think that might just be a me thing. Something I have thought about. I think A3 is my favourite size. It's double A4, so it's nice and big and bold. It looks great in a frame. And as you can imagine, I have a plethora of different bits of paper knocking about. So I'm going to go with white A3. It's not particularly thick. It's not fancy. It's just A3 paper. Doesn't need to be card unless you want to do something with it. One of the things you might want to explore as well, which I will probably touch upon later on, is that you might consider using your patterns afterwards. There's nothing to stop you cutting them all out and then using them for stuff. Once you've done this, you could cut them out and use them as tags, put them on gift cards, things like that. So you don't have to keep it like this. You can chop it up. You could, in fact, even cut it out and make it into a little magazine. I'm fairly sure I've done magazine making on here before, where you make sort of little books like this. I have one to hand, can you believe it? Out of one piece of paper. So you could do this with one of these, which would be fun. Okay, Rosie's going to stop ranting now and let's do some actual work. So I've got myself 2 bits of paper, one of which I'm going to do a really quick, easy background on, just to show you sort of how easy it can be. And then I'll use the other one and I'll just go ahead and do a nice monochrome black on white paper. So all I've got is my A3 paper, and then all you really need is one single marker pen and a pencil. So I've got a nice sharpened pencil here, and then this is a black permanent marker. It's a really cheap version of a Sharpie because I didn't want to buy Sharpies. So I bought the cheapest black marker I could find on Amazon. You don't even need to use a marker pen if you don't want. You could use your kids' felt tips if they're in good enough condition. It really doesn't matter. The point of these patterns is that they'll be really bright and bold. They've not got too much detail in them, so it doesn't need to be a fancy pen. But I'm also going to do the background. So today what I've got is I've got some of these really big chunky pencils. So these are I'm just making sure I say it right, Stabilo. These are quite pricey. I couldn't believe how much these cost. But if you've got access to any kind of pencil crayon, you can go to town with those. I'm just using these because they're chunky and I love them. And also, if you've got any other kind of coloured marker pens, so I've got these really massive Posca pens. Now, Posca pens I've spoken about a lot before. They're very, very expensive. They're a good investment if you are able to invest in them. They last forever and they work on every single surface. They're very, very useful for any kind of craft. However, these guys, so your boxes, they're super expensive. But I stumbled across, like at car boot sales, you sometimes get people selling new stuff, right? And there was a stationery stall at a car boot sale, and he was selling a brand new box of these. So I got a really good deal on them. So keep your eyes out if you are going to sort of car boot sales, jumble sales, things like that. You can get good deals on stationery if you've got hawk eyes like me. Always trying to find the best deals. So I'm just going to use these to create a background. If you don't have these, that's fine. You can use whatever you've got, but it's just a sort of just to show you guys how easy it is to cover a piece of paper in colour very quickly. Again, this would be a really good thing to do with kids if you wanted to. It's a good way to get them experimenting with colour and just filling, kids are really good at filling bits of paper with colour, I feel. Mine certainly are. So I'm going to go ahead and just do some mark making, and I'm not going to think too much about it. I don't need it to be fancy. I don't need it to look good. It's just patterns. And the only objective here is to fill the space. So you can use different shapes and different colours and see what happens. Oh, I like these colours together. I like the blue, pink and yellow. Makes a fun sound, doesn't it? And this is kind of why I'm using this sort of thing. You could use paint as well, just because it's like really quick coverage, you know. They do sometimes do like your golds and silvers as well, so that's quite fun. You get a bit of metallic in there. There's nothing stopping you putting some glitter on if you wanted to, as long as you can use a marker pen on top of what you've done and it's not going to sort of ruin the pen, or it's going to make sure that the black is nice and bold or your colour is nice and bold. Then you can do this however you want. I would say that if you are thinking of experimenting with oil pastels or chalk pastels, so I've got some lovely oil pastels here. You can get packs of oil pastels and chalk pastels for a couple of quid from pound shops and craft shops. You can buy the cheapest type. You can buy the type that's in the kids section. I don't think they're any different. I really don't know if there's much difference. So buy the cheapest ones. Honestly, you don't need fancy ones. But all I would say about the oil pastels and the chalk pastels is that you can't really use pen on top of them, because the pen will sort of it sort of soaks up the pastel and will stop working. So if you are using your oil pastels and your chalk pastels, use that for your top layer rather than your bottom layer. Or do your bottom layer and then use your, like, maybe your black oil pastel or your black chalk pastel to do your patterns on top, because you're going to struggle with your with your marker pens. Okay, so that's nice and full. I'm gonna move that to one side, but I do want to have a go with some of these chunky pencils. And you can kind of play that game where you make loads of patterns and then fill in any gaps. So any of these sort of gaps here, you could really simply, like I am, just really scribbling, fill in gaps. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just really good fun, really experimental. What other colours have we got? Maybe a red. We've not used a red yet. Yeah, good fun. And I'm just sort of searching for little gaps of white, just to sort of fill them up. Very nearly threw a pencil at the camera then. Didn't mean to. Okay. I feel like you could probably make these sort of themed. So the colour scheme in which you use and the patterns that you use. I was just thinking then, oh, these colours are nice and bright, brightening up how cold it is, because I can't believe how cold it's suddenly got. And I feel like you could probably do, you know, ones for different types of year. So like you could do like your purples and your oranges and your greens and make it a sort of Halloweeny one. And then you could use like your reds and your golds and your greens and make it Christmassy. The possibilities here are endless. Okay, so I feel like we've filled that space pretty well. I'm sure we could add more to it, but I always think that about everything. I never stop. So that's how easy it is to do like a very, very simple background. It's basically the same as, let me get my other example over here. These two. So you can probably see I've used the same colours here. So you've got your blues and your pinks and your yellows. That's using the same pens as these guys. And then these ones on here, I've just used some highlighter pens. So just to show you that something as simple as this, which I've just done in the last sort of 5 minutes, will look like this at the other side. So you can really just have a real scribble and it will still look super effective at the end. So there's your scientific proof that you can scribble and it will look great. So now we can move on to the good bit, the really fun bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of refer to my black and white one just to sort of show you where I'm going. And I'm not going to do it on this scribbly one, simply because I want you to be able to see it on these cameras. For some reason, this room, doesn't matter how low I put the blinds, the glare is wild. It's so dark outside, it's probably going to rain in about 3 minutes. And yet it's still super bright and glowy. So I want you to be able to see all the patterns that I'm drawing. So that's why I'm not going to use this one. I do love it, but I'm going to do it on a plain white piece. So first things first, we need to grid our paper into pretty much squares. Now, I said this to the people I was teaching the other day. I don't want you to draw straight lines. I think it looks better if they're a bit wiggly, just because the whole point of this is that it's experimental and it can be quite abstract. I don't want you to worry about things being straight and rulers and stuff like that. And also, I'm quite lazy and I just don't like using rulers. So here's how I'm going to grid my page up. I'm going to first of all fold it this way. So what is that? Vertically in half. And I'm not going to fold the paper completely. All I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch each end. So I know when I open it out, you've got these little pinch marks. I don't know if you can see. Maybe if I hold it like that, you can sort of see. There we go, that's better. Hold it away from the light coming through the window. You can see these pinch marks and they've sort of created a very faint line down the middle. And all you're going to do is you're going to get your pencil and just very faintly draw your line down the middle. And as you can see, I've not used a ruler. Actually, you can't see, can you? Because I've used a pencil. It's very, very faint. It's a little bit wiggly. Fine, absolutely fine. Now, I'm not going to draw this in pen. I know you can't see it, but I don't want to draw it in pen purely because of the way I'm going to do the patterns, which will all become clear in a moment. So if I show you, believe me, I've done a pencil line here. So now I'm going to fold it this way, landscape. Again, pinch either side, and then very quickly draw a line across the middle, which you probably can't see. And then, now how many have I done? Okay, I'm just making sure I've done the same amount. So to get a nice square shape on an A3, it might differ depending on what size paper you use. I'm going to go 4 across. So I'm going to go vertically again, but go into the middle. And again, I'm not being very, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not going to be very precise with it. I'm just going to do very, very quickly approximation. And then there. And I mean, that was a very wiggly line, but it's fine. Doesn't matter. Do the same again. Another wiggly line. As straight as you can get it freehand is what I'm saying. It's not going to be completely straight and accurate, but it's, you know, good as you're going to get. So now I've got 4 lines vertically and then 1 down the middle here. So depending on how you feel about it, you can do it as many as you like. But I think with A3, you're best with 6 along. So at this point, we can't sort of fold in half because we want 3. So I'm just going to do it by eye. If you want to do it with a ruler and you want to be precise about it, that's absolutely fine. I just can't be bothered. So I'm going to do 3 here and I'm going to do it by eye. So I'm just going to guess. And I'm going to say that's probably about a third. And that's probably about a third. And then what you'll see, if I hold this close up, hopefully you'll be able to see the lines. So you've got a square here. I'd say that's a pretty good square shape. You're better with squares than you are rectangles because you can fill the space better and the overall effect is much better. So you're aiming for squares rather than rectangles. Also, you'll find it much easier for cutting out or turning into a book if you do decide to do folding and cutting. Squares will be much easier to deal with. Okay, so you probably can't see this because of the pencil and the screen, but I have now, with a pencil, gridded this A3 into, let's do some counting, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24 squares. And I think that's probably the best number for an A3. If you were doing A4, I guess you would basically either do half of that amount if you wanted to, or you could do the same amount, but the squares would be much smaller because it's on half the side of the paper. that's also fine. You just might find that a thinner pen might be better for the sort of shapes we're doing, but it's totally up to you. Okay, so now I'm going to start drawing with my black pen. If you feel like doing pencil first, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to go straight in with the pen, but it will be easier for you to see me do it with the pen first, because you can't really see the pencil on my camera. But before I start, what I wanted to talk about was negative and positive space. And I think negative and positive space is the key to making this look great. Because I'm using one colour, and I think it works with all the other colours as well, but I think the key here is that we've drawn our grid with pencil, but we can't see the grid. We can't see the squares. The squares have been created by each pattern that we have drawn. And so what's a really good way of making that stand out is that we use some negative space and some positive space. I'm going to tell you what that means. This square here, so this heart, has been drawn using negative space. And what I mean by that is that the heart hasn't been drawn. The background has been drawn. So we've coloured the background in to reveal the shape of a heart. So that is a example of a negative space pattern. Next to it, we've got this star, which is positive space. So we've literally drawn the star and coloured it in, and then we've left the background. And I think the reason the negative and positive space work really well on this grid is because if we mix them up throughout, you're creating your grid simply with the pattern that we're choosing, and then you don't need to draw the squares. And I think that that's why this works so well. So the positive and negative space are, I think, absolutely key to this looking good. I think if you can mix up your positive and negative space, you can't go wrong with this. This sun is a really good example of both. So this half of the sun is using negative space, and this half of the sun is using positive space. So that's the easiest way to imagine it. If you're doing negative space, you're creating a shape with the background. So we're going to do a bit of both. This spiral here is negative space. And we're just going to really explore some very bold and very simple patterns and mix it up a bit. And I'll just sort of go through what I'm doing. Okay, let's start. Let's begin. I'm going to move this to one side. I'm going to try and do it slightly different to the one that's over there, but I will probably copy some of them. So I think what I might do at this point, I might move my camera just a bit closer up to the paper, just so you can see what I'm doing, because I'm going to be working square to square. So apologies for the camera wobble. I'm just going to move in slightly. And also I'm going to have to be really careful not to whack my camera with my hand, which is probably going to happen quite a lot, isn't it? So now you can probably see the pencil line, so you can see where we're working. So let's start with something really simple, and we'll do a positive space. And so the way I want to think about this is all the different shapes, and then also kind of patterns that are in nature. That's probably it. I'd say all the shapes and nature shapes. I think that's probably what I've gone for. So you've got your stars, your hearts, your circles, your triangles, your squares. And then we've got things like leaves, sun, petals, flower, that sort of thing. I think if you stick with all of those things, you can't go wrong. You simply can't go wrong. Okay, let's begin. So I'm going to start with something really, really simple. And I'm going to do maybe start with a spiky leaf. And we'll do positive space. So the other thing about this is I would look at angles. So I'm going to do a nice leaf going diagonally, because I think it fits the square really nicely and it fills the space. You want to fill the square as much as you can. So I'm going to do my leaves diagonally, and then the next one, you might do the opposite of that. So let's start with a leaf anyway, and then see where we go. So I'm just going to very simply make a leaf shape and try and fill the space as much as I can. And at this point, what I might do is I might draw a little line that I then won't colour in, just so we've got a nice bit of positive and negative. And then I'm going to colour that in. Simple as that. So as you can see, this sort of marker pen is really, really good for colouring in. So you want a nice thick one, especially if you're doing A3. These sort of Sharpie style ones are really good because they're nice and you know that they're going to be very sort of block in colour. And I think colouring in itself is actually quite therapeutic, isn't it? So because we're doing very, very simple shapes, it's nice and fun to colour in, feels nice. And doesn't matter if you go out the lines because you've drawn the line yourself. Okay. This is quite a smelly pen. I do forget this about marker pens. They are a bit stinky, aren't they? Okay. And also you don't have to be precise with your colouring in if you don't want. It can be a bit scraggly if you want it to. I think that adds to it. Okay, so we've got our first leaf here. So now I'm going to move on to this side. Now, I've just realised I'm left-handed. So it was very kind of natural for me to start on the left and work my way to the right. Maybe not though, I'm not sure. If you're, basically, it doesn't matter which way you do it. You could do it randomly. You could start in the middle and then come over here and work your way around. It's totally up to you. But I was just thinking then, if you're right-handed and it feels more natural to start over this side and work your way to the left, that's fine. It's just how I kind of did it. So I'm going to move on to the next one now. So for the next one, I think what I'll do is I'll do a negative space, but also because this one is a diagonal, I'm going to make sure that this one isn't. So I think what I'll do is something really simple. I'm going to draw a wiggly circle like that. But I'm going to colour in the background. So here's our first example of negative space. So for this one, we can draw around the grid because we're going to colour everything in within that grid. And what I might do actually, seeing as there's some space, stick a couple more little circles in there. Why not? So now, in contrast to our leaf over here, we're going to colour the background of this one in. Very good. I'm trying to think of like other patterns that we might use. I mean, again, you can probably Google like really simple patterns, look on Pinterest for simple patterns and copy them. You don't have to sort of come up with all these ideas yourself. You can totally research them. And also, I concentrate on colouring in so much I can't speak. Also, as I said before, you do not have to go in with your pen straight away. You can draw this out with a pencil first if you want. You don't have to freehand this. I think it's more fun to freehand it though, because it's kind of the fun of it, right? Okay, so that's our second grid. Are we going to make it to 24 grids? I'm not sure. We'll see. Okay, next one. Let's think. So the other thing as well that I like to think about is we've got some really bold ones. So for example, the leaf is like one big leaf. This is one big circle. You might want to fill the space with like lots of little things. So you might want to do, and I think I'll do that next actually, like lots of little lines or little circles. Maybe I'll do some spirals. I quite like doing spirals. They're quite fun. So I'm going to go across like this and I'm going to fill the space with those. Now you can be super intricate with this if you want. You don't have to do simple ones. If you're like, if you feel really, you know, like quite skilled at drawing. I ran this session the other day for a group of people, and one of the ladies doing it was really amazing at like drawing kind of natural landscapes, almost kind of William Morris style. And so she did all these line drawings of trees and leaves that had loads of intricate lines, and she did them with really beautiful sharp pencils, and it looked amazing. She applied exactly the same rules to it. So she gridded her paper up and did one different pattern in each square, and it looked incredible. Completely different to this. Like it couldn't have looked more different to what we're doing right now. but she applied the same rules and it worked really, really well. So I think if you have a different style of drawing or a different style of art and you want to try it, still give this a go because it will still work really well. Okay, so I've got our spirals now. So now we want to think about, oh, what should we do next? Maybe something, maybe like a flower. Maybe a flower now, but going upright. Or maybe we could do a diagonal this way, actually, because we've got a diagonal here. So I'm going to do a diagonal here. This one's going to be quite liney, I think. I'm going to do a big circle like this. And I'm going to do some big leaves that fill it again with trying to fill the space. And now I guess I quite like that some of them are lines and aren't coloured in, but I might give it a bit more. Maybe I'll do some sort of petals around it and we'll colour those in. So you definitely want some block colour in each of your images, I think. Just because you want that contrast to go throughout. Perfect. And then maybe we'll put a line through the leaves as well. That would be quite nice. Very good. So we've got our first line. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to move the camera up ever so slightly so we can see how we're getting on. Great. So I think I'll go up to here now. And I'm going to go with a negative space, or maybe a bit of a half and half. So for example, what you can do is you can draw your line from your grid, but just half of it. And then you could do like a fun shape like that. And then we could colour that in. I think that will probably be fine, wouldn't it, this one, actually? I don't think this needs any more. I was going to say you could kind of do a bit of symmetry and do a bit of a mirror image. I think mirror images work quite well. So, for example, this one here, I was thinking about that one. That's a sort of mirror image of itself, or the sun one. And then I got carried away and did this one really big. Never mind, it's fine. We've got lots and lots of squares to fill, so it's all good. And the overall effect is very, very worthwhile, I feel. Okay, fantastic. I think that will do. So now we've got a lovely black line here. So this one we might sort of fill an area and colour that in. So we've got a nice white bit. So maybe we'll go with, let's think. Let's do like a floaty sort of seaweedy thing. A seaweedy thing? We all know what a seaweedy thing is, don't we? I'm gonna go from this top corner actually. I'm gonna do some wiggly lines. And I'm going to work my way. And again, the real key is to sort of filling the space. You don't want to just do something little that sits in the middle of the square. You want something that is really filling the whole area. I'm going to colour that in. Yeah, that's a seaweedy thing, isn't it? Sure. Okay. I'm being quite lackluster with my colouring in, so I can do it nice and speedily. Colouring in as quickly as I can. Okay, looking good. Okay, so now I'm feeling like now, because we've got our positive space here and a negative space here, this one could be like a similar to this, and it could be lots of little things. I think that could work quite nicely. So maybe thinking something liney, or maybe something really simple. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go horizontal because that's diagonal. I'm going to do a line, and I'm going to colour that line in. Just like geometric shapes work quite nicely if you're into like that's like geometry and things like that. So I'm going to do like a kind of triangle, I think. It's like resting on top of the line. Nice. And then I'm going to do the same, but the triangle might... Oh, the triangle is going to not be touching this line as much. Yeah, there we go. Because we don't want to... I don't want to impede on this negative space here. And then maybe because we've got a gap here, we could do the same again. So we could put another one here, like that. Why not? We're just experimenting with patterns. Lovely. Okay, so the next one, I think we could probably go in with a negative space now because we've got a lovely gap here. These have all been positives. So let's go. Maybe we'll do... Oh, decisions. The decisions. I can't decide. Maybe, I know. I'm going to do a sideways rainbow. I'm going to colour this bit in. All the way along here. Colour this background in. And then now we need to think about, I guess, what we're going to do with this rainbow. Does it want some stripes on it? Is it a rainbow or is it just a semicircle? I'm not sure. Not decided yet. Okay. Yeah, it definitely needs something. I think I will do some lines, but maybe just like, maybe one thick one. So I'm going to colour this one in. And then maybe one here that's coloured in as well. Nice. I'm happy with that. Okay, now I guess we can go up again and work our way across. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. You can do it at whichever rate you so wish. I'm feeling like I'm ready to do some kind of star because I do like drawing stars. So I'm going to do a nice star that has loads and loads of spiky bits on. They're my favourite type. I'm going to colour that in. Lovely. I love colouring in. Colouring in's great, isn't it? Good fun. Do you know what you could do as well? This is a great option here, is you could kind of do exactly what I'm doing now, but just draw the shapes as an outline. And then you could give it to someone to colour in. Oh, you could colour it in yourself. But you could almost create this as a colouring in exercise. So you could build up the shapes with a thinner, maybe a thinner pen and a thinner line. And then leave it. And then when you need to colour it in or give it to someone else to colour in, I think that would be quite fun. I think that could work. Okay, so I'm feeling like a half and half negative space and positive space. So I'm going to go diagonally this way, and then I'm going to do a sort of wiggly shape like that, and then I'm going to do a mirror image of it, and then I'm going to do a negative and a positive space. So I need to decide which is going to be which. I think I'm going to do this side as the negative space. So I can do this side of the grid and colour that in. And then I'll do the opposite. So then I'll colour the wiggly shape in and then leave this bit white. Okay. Colour that side in. So I guess like there's sort of quite a lot of symmetry in this. But also we're making creative decisions about when we don't want to be symmetrical. So when we do our mirror images like this and have our positive and negative spaces, it's like purposely being symmetrical, but then in some instances we're purposely not being symmetrical. So it's a real sort of mismatch. Okay, what's next? Let's do maybe like some kind of spiral I'm feeling. Yeah, let's do a spiral. Okay, I'm not going to do, oh, but do I want to do a negative space spiral? No, I'm going to do a positive space spiral, I think. So I'm going to do my spiral bit by bit, and then I always get confused as to where it begins and where it ends, because I'm doing 2 lines so that I can fill it in. So what I'll probably do is I'll start filling it in now, so I don't get too confused. I've done this before where I've got all the way round and then realised I've gone wrong somewhere. Okay, nearly got to the edge. So we can go around a little bit more, I think. And then maybe stop there. That's probably enough, isn't it? Lovely. And then I feel like we're ready for a negative space now. So I might do some kind of, I think some kind of like leafy type thing. Maybe coming from this way, actually. I'm going to do like a spiky leaf. And then I'm going to colour the background of this one in. So I can go along my grid. And then sort of like trying to use my eyes around the camera. Because it's so close to my hand. I'm sort of not got much visibility, which is good skill, because I'm sort of really doing this by kind of feeling and get a bit of guesswork. I guess that's sort of the fun of it, isn't it? Is that it's not about, because even though, like, you know, I said then I was going to do a spiky leaf, it doesn't really look like a spiky leaf, but the kind of intention was there. And then by the end of it, it just looks like a really beautiful pattern. It doesn't have to be precise at all. Okay, so the negative space ones always take a bit longer because the background takes quite a long time to colour in. I think it's worth it. I definitely think it pays off. Okay, that's looking good. So now can you see how important these negative space ones are for the sort of contrast of the piece itself? It's really, really worth it. Okay, so now I'm going to go, I think I'm going to go back up above this star and do something here. Now I'm not going to do a full negative space, but I'm going to fill this area quite a bit. So I think I'm going to do like, I'm feeling like a massive triangle here would be nice. I'm going to colour that in first, because I was just feeling like a triangle was needed. And then maybe I'll add something to it. We'll see. Now, if you have, so one of the example pieces I did with one of those like double-ended pens where you have like this sort of nib on one end and then like a highlighter on the other, so that you could use the highlighter to do the big chunky colouring in bits to speed things up a bit. So if you've got any of those, and they're quite useful for this sort of thing. What's going to go on the top of this triangle? I'm feeling like just like some kind of semicircle like this. That feels right. And if you don't know, sort of, if you're a bit worried about like having the ability to sort of think creatively about what you're doing, I guess like you can do it by power of denomination. You can literally sort of go, well, I've got a star here, so I'm not going to do a star around it. I've got a leafy shape here, so what other shapes haven't I done that are near it? So I've gone star. There's no triangles nearby. I'll do a triangle. So now I know I won't do a triangle here or here or here. So you can do it like that. You can really think about it quite logically and say, right, well, I've not done a circle for the last 4, so now I can do a circle shape. That's absolutely fine if you want to do it like that. I think that's fine as it is, actually. Quite like that, quite simplified. I think I'm ready now for something that's quite bitty, little bits. But what shapes? I feel like I'm quite into these semicircle shapes at the minute. So I might have an experiment with some sort of semicircles and colouring those in. And I'm going to do them at different angles and see what happens. Well, I can't play out in my garden because the weather is horrendous. Is it nice where you are, Janet? I hope it's nice and sunny in your garden. I mean, I have put the washing out in the garden. It's not rained yet, but it is definitely threatening to. We've had the heating on and everything. It's unbelievable. I am a bit of a lizard though. I do feel the cold very, very easily. So I have been complaining endlessly about, it's a slight drop in temperature. It's quite obviously autumn now. We've gone from obviously summer to obviously autumn. But I'm sort of reacting as if like I'm really shocked by it. I can't believe how cold it is, but it is September. It's very normal. So, I mean, if you have been in the garden, I feel like this is a really good place to do this because you can use all of those examples of shapes in gardens. I feel like you could copy every single shape of every single leaf, flower, or thing that's in your garden and apply that to this. So if you need inspiration, I think any sort of outdoor thing is useful. Just looking around, kitchen, you could look around your kitchen. You could copy shapes that are in your kitchen. You could copy shapes that are, just like in your eye line. Just have a look around. I do often think we sort of forget that there's inspiration all around us. Yes, I like this one. This one's kind of reminding me of like if I added some sort of other shapes, it'd be quite kind of 80s pattern. Okay, so now I'm going to definitely do a negative space. I feel like we're ready for a negative space because we've got positive, positive, positive. So do a nice negative space here. Let's go in real easy and do a lovely heart. Now the hearts work really well diagonally because of the shape. And I'm going to just go in with full negative space. We could add some of the shapes, I suppose, if we wanted to do some, maybe we'll do some little circles around here, just because we can. I was just thinking then, can you actually see which bit I'm colouring in? I was sort of getting into the zone then. I don't know if it's nice to watch other people colouring in. I think it is. It's like watching people doing fancy writing. One of my favourites is watching people do like sign writing with sign writing brushes. That's very pleasing to watch. What size are the squares? Well, essentially, it doesn't matter what size the squares are. But I can sort of tell you. So this is an A3 piece of paper. And I have split it into 24 squares. So I've gone down the middle and then down and then a middle again vertically. Hang on, let me move this up again just so I can go through the sizes again. So I've gone in the middle vertically and then to the middle vertically, to the middle vertically. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you've gone through the middle landscape. So half of your A3 there. And then these have gone into 3 squares. So you're going to end up with 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24 squares. Now, I haven't done this with a ruler. I have just sort of done it by eye. I've sort of folded, pinched the top, and then just gone down with a pencil. So you want to create your squares with the pencil, but you don't have to be precise. I think it works better. And you can see actually in this grid now that it's forming that these squares aren't perfect. You can see they're a bit wobbly. You can see that they aren't completely straight. Some of them are slightly bigger than others, and I think that's better. So if you are making them into squares, this is an A3 piece of paper. I've made 24 squares, but I haven't used a ruler and I haven't measured anything. I've just gone by sort of eye and a bit of folding. And yeah, you can re-watch this as well. You can watch from the beginning if you want to see how I did it. But how I did it was very simple. But you might want to consider the size of your squares if you're using a different different size paper. So if you're using an A4 piece of paper, if you were to put this into an A4 piece of paper into 24 squares, then the squares are going to be much smaller than this. And you might want to consider using a thinner pen. So this is like a Sharpie. You might want to use a fine liner, or you could even use a biro. Alternatively, you could put less squares in a smaller piece of paper. So an A4 one, so this is A3 into 24, but if you folded it in half, you would get your, hang on, I can do this. If you fold this into half, that's an A4 piece of paper, and that's how it would look if you did half the amount of squares. So you got 3, 6, 9, 12. So if you turned your A4 paper into 12 squares, that's what it would look like. And then if you did 24 squares into A4, it would be much smaller squares. So it's entirely up to you how you do it, what you feel like would look best or what you feel most comfortable with. But I've gone for 24 squares and haven't measured them. Okay, so we've done our negative space heart. So we've got our negative space, we've got a negative space here, so we'll do a positive space here. What shall we do now? What shape haven't we done? I'm just looking at some of my examples and thinking of copying them. I quite like this this sort of vase shape. Let's do one of those. Let's do like a little vase. And I'm going to go like that. I'm going to leave a gap of white. And then do a little pattern. Circle, circle. And then I'm just going to do some lines sticking out of it just to give the sort of impression that it's foliage. And then I'm going to colour my vase in. But again, it's all about contrast. So I've purposely put a couple of shapes in there so that they're not being coloured in. But then some of them, like this one, for example, I've just gone massive triangle, you know? And that's the key, is a bit of everything, is just really mixing it up. Lovely. Okay, so now we've done that. What we're going to do next, we're going to go up here and we're going to go, oh, I'm not sure. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do one of these ones that's like circles that are joined together. They're quite fun. So I'm just doing different size circles, but and again, I'm being so like quick with this. I'm not being careful. They're not perfect circles, and I don't want them to be perfect circles. I want them to be all completely random. They look a little bit like rocks. I think I quite like that they look like rocks, but they're all joined, and then I'm going to colour them in. Now, I don't think I'm going to fill the full 24 squares in the time. However, I've done a pretty good job considering all the yapping that I did before we started. I think I've done all right. But again, you can really take your time with this. You don't have to, I'm being super quick with this. You don't have to be, you can take your time. I want this to be like an enjoyable thing for you to do. And, you know, I've purposely done it without measuring. I've purposely done really simple shapes because I don't want it to feel like something that's difficult to do. It's supposed to just be fun. And sort of a nice time to switch off and just think about shapes and colouring in, you know. But I think the end result is pretty fabulous, to be honest. Okay, I'm going to do like I feel like I'm going to do like an X. That's what I'm feeling next. It's going to fill the shape just because square, I was just thinking noughts and crosses then. Noughts and crosses seem to be, and it's a very off-centre, unsymmetrical X, but I'm That feels like it works for me. Yes, so I did speak about this at the beginning. If you want to rewatch, but I will touch on it again, Janet, is talking about positive and negative space. And I think the positive and negative space really is the key to making these look super good. So really mixing up. Some of them I've coloured in on the outside, which is your negative space, and then others I've coloured on the inside, which is your positive space. So your negative space is where you're sort of creating the shape out of the background. And I think that's what makes these things look so good. So I think really, in fact, let's do one of those suns now, because I feel like they're a really good example of your positive and negative. So you can all have a go at this. And this particular pattern itself just looks really good on its own. So if you want to fill a whole piece of paper with this, please do, because it looks wonderful. So I do a line through the middle, and then do a nice big circle. And then I'm going to do sun rays all the way around it. And then I'm going to do positive and negative space. So I'm going to start with my negative space. So my negative space is the background here. So I'm colouring all the background of the sun here. I'm doing real speed colouring in now because we're so close to the end. I think I'll manage 20 squares, not 24, but that's good enough for me. And then I'm going to colour this half of the sun in. So you've got black, white, black. And then for your positive space, you would colour this half in, but you just do your sun rays. And again, that's like your mirror image of positive and negative, like we've done down here as well. That's a really nice way of doing it, really nice way of breaking up a pattern. Lovely, lovely. I'm actually painting this pattern in a jacket at the minute. It looks really good, big, if you want to give it a try. Okay, so there's your positive and negative sun. What we're going to do here, I'm going to do one more before I go. I think I'm going to do some kind of leaf type thing. I'm going to do one of these ones. These ones are really fun. So it's sort of like a big semicircle with a stick on the end. And then I'm going to do some like almost petals, I guess. And then we can do one over the top. I don't know what this is, but it's definitely a type of plant. And I don't know the name of it, but I like drawing them. I think they have like little seeds on them, maybe. Or maybe it's just a shape I've made up in my head, and actually it's not anything at all. But either way, it looks good. I think simplifying sort of shapes of flowers and plants is a really good way of doing this. And then for this one, I'm just going to sort of try and put some little circles in it, but colouring it in really speedily because I'm aware of the time. Okay, that's fine. Fantastic. Right. Now, let's just forget that Rosie hasn't done the top 4. However, I think I've done a gallant effort here. That is how you create your gridded art. As I said before, please don't feel like you have to measure it or do any specific lines. I've just gridded it as simply as I possibly can with my pencil. Really think about your positive and negative space when you're filling these spaces, but really have fun with the simplicity of the shapes. You're just doing shapes. That's all it is. And you're colouring in some of them and colouring the background in some of them. And I think you'll agree the overall effect is pretty fantastic. I think you could frame these and put them up in any kind of room or hotel, whatever. You could sell them. They're gorgeous. I love doing them. I'm going to go now. Thank you all so much. My name's Rosie. My business is Rosie and Ramona. And well, you can comment on the Facebook page, Janet. So when this goes out, you're free to comment. So please do send your pictures. We'd really love to see them. I'd love to see your work because they're so much fun to do as well. Let us know all about it. Yes, I've been Rosie, and I'll be back again soon with some more crafty stuff. Have a great day. Enjoy the garden while you can. I'm going to go and put the heating on and wrap myself up in a blanket and have a hot drink. Thank you all so much, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.